There's a conversation we need to have, and I know it makes you uncomfortable. Hell, it makes everyone uncomfortable. But your discomfort is precisely why we're having it. Because while you've been avoiding this topic, hiding behind the curtain of "it's natural" or "everyone does it," something has been happening to you. Something subtle. Something you've probably felt but couldn't quite name. You wake up tired even after 8 hours of sleep. You sit down to work on that project that's supposed to change your life, and the motivation just isn't there. You look at yourself in the mirror, and there's something missing in your eyes. That fire, that hunger, that sense of being truly alive. You've told yourself it's stress, or diet, or just getting older. But what if I told you it's none of those things? What if the very habit you've been told is perfectly healthy is actually the invisible hand pushing you further from the man you're capable of becoming? I'm talking about masturbation, and before you click away or dismiss this as some puritanical rant, hear me out. This isn't about morality, or religion, or shame. This is about power, your power, and how you might be unknowingly giving it away one moment of fleeting pleasure at a time. Modern culture has sold you a story. It goes something like this. Sexual release is natural, necessary even. Denying yourself is unhealthy repression. You need it for stress relief, for prostate health, for sanity. And because everyone's doing it, and because science says it's fine, you've never questioned it. Why would you? But here's what they don't tell you. Here's the part that gets conveniently left out of those articles assuring you it's all perfectly normal. Every time you engage in this habit, you're completing a neurological circuit that was designed to reward you for one of the most significant acts a human can perform, the creation of new life. Your brain doesn't know you're alone in your room. It doesn't distinguish between a genuine, intimate connection with another person and the artificial stimulation of your hand and a screen. What it does know is that you've just accomplished something evolutionarily significant, and it floods your system with dopamine, the reward chemical. And here's where everything starts to unravel, because you've now taught your brain that it can receive this massive chemical reward, this feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction, without actually accomplishing anything at all, without building anything, without risking anything, without becoming anything more than you already are. Do you see the trap? You've short-circuited the very mechanism that's supposed to drive you forward. The part of you that should be hungry, restless, and ambitious has already been fed. It's satisfied. It's content. And contentment without achievement is just another word for stagnation. The Stoics weren't prudes. They weren't religious zealots trying to control people's behavior. They were practical philosophers who observed human nature with ruthless clarity and asked a simple question: what leads to human flourishing, and what leads to human degradation? When Seneca wrote that no man is free who is a slave to his body, he wasn't being poetic. He was describing a fundamental truth about the human condition. Every impulse you cannot control is a chain around your neck. Every desire that owns you is a master you serve. And the cruel irony is that the more you serve these masters, the more demanding they become. Think about how this habit has evolved in your life. Maybe it started innocently enough, curiosity, exploration, the normal stuff of adolescence. But over time, what changed? Did it become easier to resist or harder? Did it need it less or more? Did it start requiring more stimulation, more novelty, more intensity to achieve the same feeling? If you're honest with yourself, you know the answer, because that's how all addictions work. They start as a guest, maybe even a welcome one, but slowly, imperceptibly, they become the homeowner, and you become the guest in your own life. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world during his time, could have had anything he wanted, any pleasure, any indulgence, any excess. It was all available to him. Yet he chose discipline, not because he was afraid of pleasure, but because he understood something profound.
The man who can have anything but chooses to master himself is infinitely more powerful than the man who simply takes everything he wants. Let's talk about what this habit is actually costing you. And I don't mean the obvious stuff like time or energy, though those costs are real. I mean the deeper, more insidious costs that you've probably never connected to this behavior. Have you noticed that your confidence around women has declined, that approach anxiety has gotten worse rather than better? There's a reason for that. When you regularly engage in this habit, especially with pornography, you're training your brain that you don't need real connection. You don't need to develop social skills, face rejection, or build genuine intimacy. Your biological drive for connection is being artificially satisfied, so why would your brain push you to take social risks?
The result is a cruel paradox. The more you seek sexual satisfaction in isolation, the less capable you become of actually connecting with real people. You're starving yourself while believing you're being fed. And what about your ambition, your creative drive? Every great achievement in history came from someone who had energy, hunger, and an almost unreasonable willingness to push through obstacles. Where do you think that energy comes from? It comes from the same place as your sexual energy. It's the same force, just directed differently. When you constantly deplete that energy through this habit, you're not just losing the 5 or 10 minutes it takes to indulge, you're losing the hours and days afterward when you could have channeled that drive into something that actually builds your life. You're trading potential achievement for momentary pleasure, and you're making that trade over and over again, sometimes multiple times a day. Here's what nobody tells you about breaking this habit. It's not really about the habit itself. It's about who you become when you're no longer controlled by it. When you first start resisting the urge, it feels like deprivation, like you're denying yourself something you need. But if you can push through that initial phase, and I'm not going to lie, it's uncomfortable, something remarkable starts to happen. That energy you've been releasing has nowhere to go. It starts building, and it's looking for an outlet. This is the moment where everything changes, but only if you're ready for it, because that energy is indifferent to how you use it. It can turn into frustration and irritability, or it can become the fuel for transformation. The choice is entirely yours. When you redirect that energy, when you channel it into your work, your training, your creative pursuits, your relationships, you tap into a source of power you probably forgot you had. Suddenly, you're waking up with ideas. You're tackling projects you've been avoiding for months. You're having conversations you would have previously been too timid to initiate. This isn't mystical thinking or pseudoscience. This is the simple reality that energy is finite, and when you stop draining it in one area, it becomes available in others. The ancient concept of transmutation isn't about magic. It's about physics. Energy doesn't disappear, it just changes form. Imagine for a moment a version of yourself who has never formed this habit, or better yet, a version who broke free from it years ago. How does he walk into a room? How does he handle eye contact? What's his relationship with challenge and discomfort? This man doesn't avoid difficult conversations because he's not carrying the subtle shame that comes from constantly indulging in behavior he knows deep down isn't serving him. He doesn't lack confidence around women because he hasn't trained his brain that intimacy can be simulated and satisfaction can be achieved in isolation. He doesn't lack drive because his energy isn't being constantly drained and depleted. This man has access to something you've been giving away, his full power. And the terrible, wonderful truth is that this man isn't some fantasy. He's who you become when you stop choosing comfort over growth, pleasure over purpose, and easy satisfaction over earned achievement. Breaking free from this isn't about willpower alone, though you'll need that too. It's about understanding what you're actually doing every time you engage in this habit. You're making a choice about who you want to be. You're either choosing to be a man who is controlled by his impulses, or you're choosing to be a man who directs his energy toward meaningful ends. Every single time you feel the urge and choose not to act on it, you're not just abstaining from a behavior, you're actively building a different version of yourself. You're strengthening the neural pathways of self-control. You're proving to yourself that you're capable of delayed gratification. You're redirecting energy from a dead end into channels that actually lead somewhere. The first few days will be difficult. Your brain will protest loudly because you're disrupting a pattern it's come to depend on. The first few weeks will challenge you in ways you didn't expect. But somewhere around the 30-day mark, if you can make it that far, something shifts. The constant mental noise quiets down. The urges become less frequent and less intense, and you start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time, like you're actually in control of yourself. Here's what it comes down to. Are you satisfied with who you are right now? With your level of confidence, your energy, your drive, your relationship with yourself and others? If the answer is yes, then nothing I've said matters. Keep doing what you're doing. But if there's even a small part of you that knows you're capable of more, that feels like something is holding you back, that senses you're not living at your full potential, then you have to at least consider that this habit might be the problem. You don't need to believe everything I've written here. You just need to be willing to experiment. Try 30 days without this habit and see what happens. Not as some moral test or religious obligation, but as a genuine experiment in self-mastery. See what changes. See who you become. See what becomes possible when you stop giving away your power and start redirecting it toward the man you're capable of being. The Stoics had a concept called amor fati, the love of fate. It meant accepting whatever happened to you and using it as fuel for growth. But they also believed in creating your fate through your choices, through your daily practices, through your willingness to choose what's difficult over what's easy. This is one of those choices. Every day, multiple times a day, you get to choose the easy pleasure that leads to nowhere or the difficult discipline that leads to everything. The choice has always been yours. The only question is whether you're finally ready to make it.